Hi, I'm Jamie Lewis, and welcome back to thebassist.net. One question that I often get asked is how I do all my recordings here at the Bassist headquarters. People want to know what hardware I'm using, what software I'm using, what cameras and lenses and microphones and cables and even light bulbs. And I'm going to, little by little, start answering those questions for you. So today, I'm going to start with telling you which DAW I use to do all of my audio recording and editing here at thebassist.net. So like I said, today we're talking about DAWs, and the one that I use is called Studio One, and it's made by Presonus. If you don't know what a DAW is, that's just fancy talk for Digital Audio Workstation, which is what we use today to record and edit audio rather than tape machines. Now, I've been doing this for about 15 years now. Yeah, about 15 years, and I've used almost every DAW that there is. I started in Logic Pro 7, and in college I had to use Digital Performer and Reason. Obviously, I've toyed with GarageBand when I got my first Apple computer. And let's see, what else have I used? I started using Pro Tools with 7.3, and then I upgraded to 9, and then I went Pro Tools HD for 10 and 11. And about 2 years ago, I ditched all of it, and I went to Studio One. I really have used like every DAW out there, and Studio One is hands down my favorite one. Now let me say this, every DAW today, they all do the same thing. They all record and edit audio and MIDI. They all let you record something and then dice it up and move it around and mix it and use plugins and make it sound as good as you can. The things that differ would be things like the workflow, specific feature sets that each DAW has, what the hotkeys are, what they name certain things. So like in Pro Tools, it's called consolidating, but in Studio One, it'll be called merging. And in Logic, I wrote it down, what is it called? Oh, joining regions, right? And then there's also the reliability of the program, and that will differ from platform to platform, because the worst thing that could happen would you get audio dropouts, or you're recording something or mixing something, you forgot to press save, and then the program crashed. That's the worst thing that can happen. So every DAW will differ in how it deals with those specific areas, but other than that, they all do the same thing. And for me, I've just found that Studio One checks all of those boxes in the right place for my workflow and for what I'm trying to do with my music and everything I do here at thebassist.net. Now, Presonus is not paying me to say any of this. I get zero benefit out of it. And I'm not trying to trash the other DAWs too. Like I said, they're all great. I've used them all. However, I ditched them for very specific reasons. And so today I just want to share with you the things that I love about Studio One and how they won me over from all the other DAWs that I've used. I'll start with the fact that Presonus actually listens to their user base, to their customers. Every major update that comes out is loaded with new features, and the majority of them are the features that we asked for. And I know that seems kind of simple, but that is huge, because well, I'll bet many of you use a very popular recording platform that I'm not going to name that kind of has a reputation for giving customers the opposite of the things that they're asking for, which is ridiculous. And Studio One is just the opposite of that. They listen to their customer base. They listen to me. And when new updates come out, the latest one as of the filming of this video is version 3.5. There's a whole bunch of new features in there, and some of them are the ones that I asked for. And that's just awesome. So for me personally, that's a big one. And actually, it's probably the biggest, is that the company that makes this software, Presonus, is avidly listening to their audience, unlike some other companies. No pun intended. So let me just talk about some of those cool features. The first one, and this is for me personally, is that multi-touch is built into the platform of the program. I use a very large touchscreen monitor to do my mixing and just my editing, my workflow uses this big touchscreen, and the Studio One can use it. Not every DAW, actually, as far as I know, from the time that this video is being filmed, no other DAW has touch built into it. Studio One is the only one. There are third-party plugins and softwares and hardware that you can use that'll let you do that, but it's kind of clunky, it's not very customizable, and it's not very intuitive. Another amazing feature is that Melodyne is already built into the DAW on the front end. If you don't know, Melodyne is just a very popular auto-tuning software. And if you do post-production work or any kind of mixing and editing, if you've got stacks and stacks of backing vocals, you know exactly how tedious it is to, click the render button and wait for Melodyne to analyze the audio, and then you can go ahead and do all your tuning. It's built into the DAW, so all I do is I just click on it and I hit the Melodyne button and it pulls it up in Melodyne and it's already snapped to the grid. It's already analyzed and I can go ahead and do my tuning. This is huge. Let's say you've got a 3-minute song and there's only 10 vocals on it, which that's not that long of a song and that's not that many backing vocals, all right? And you've got to tune every single one of them. Well, to play that 3-minute song 10 times for all of that, that's 30 minutes you're gonna save just by having Melodyne built in. So seriously, that Melodyne integration was a huge draw for me to Studio One. And actually, if you don't own Melodyne, you don't have to buy it. There's a, geez, I don't know, it's like their $100 version of Melodyne, their entry level. It already comes with Studio One, so you get it right out of the box. And if you have one of the higher levels of Melodyne, well, you just enter in your product key and it uses that one instead. It's really awesome. And Studio One is also pretty affordable when compared to some of the other DAWs. And they even offer a cross-grade pricing. If you're coming from like Pro Tools or Cubase or Logic or whatever, they'll give you a discount just for jumping over to Studio One. There's no subscriptions, all the updates are free, you don't have to pay for tech support. And I know that sounds like a joke, but some companies avidly require you to purchase support tickets just to talk to them. Pun intended. So if you're short on coin, then Studio One definitely delivers far above its price point. And another cool feature that just came out with the 3.5 update is dual playback engines. So check this out. If you're new to like digital recording and DAWs and all that stuff, the way that it works is your audio signal is translated from analog to digital and then back into analog, meaning I plug in my bass, right? And I play, and it takes the analog sound and turns it into zeros and ones, which is computer speak. So there's an analog to digital conversion. And then it translates it back into analog, turns those zeros and ones into something that my ear can actually hear and understand and interpret as sound. And that process induces some latency. It has to process that information, so therefore it takes some time in computer land. And so from the time I hit my note, it's several milliseconds later before I hear it. And the name of the game here is to get your latency down as low as possible. You'll never get rid of it completely, but there is nothing worse than trying to record something and hearing it a second later. That's just awful. So your recording software deals with this problem by implementing something called a buffer size. You keep your buffer size really low, that way you minimize the amount of latency. However, this comes at a cost. The lower your buffer size, the harder your computer is working to keep up with itself, and it's more than likely to crash, especially if your computer is not strong enough. You'll get dropouts, you'll get pops and clicks and digital jitter, and that's just nasty. Since the dawn of digital recording, this is what you had to do. Keep your buffer size low during tracking, make it high during mixing, and what number do you need? Well, it depends on your computer, it depends on how many tracks you're recording, it depends on how many tracks you have in your session, how many plugins are open. I mean, it's just, it's this balancing act. But with Studio One version 3.5, that's not a problem anymore because you have two different buffer sizes. You can set a tracking buffer size, meaning you can set that number low for the 4 or 8 or 16 channels that you're recording right now to keep the latency down. And then for the other 20 tracks that you're playing to or VST software instruments or anything else that's happening, you can set a higher buffer size. And so the computer can relax on that and focus on this. That is freaking brilliant. Why hasn't every DAW ever? Why haven't we always had two different buffer sizes, two different playback engines? I don't know, but as far as I'm aware, Studio One's the only one who has this. So I just think that's freaking brilliant. So if you're monitoring through your DAW, in other words, you don't have a recording console or a summing mixer or some other way that you're getting your headphone mixes, then that dual playback engine is reason enough for you to switch to Studio One. It's amazing. And the last thing I'll talk about is probably the simplest one, but it really does make a big difference, is that Studio One is very customizable, meaning I can make it look and work based on my workflow, not yours, or not what the company has decided everyone needs to do. Things like the layout, the color scheme, the hotkeys, macros. It has a macro engine built in, and I can customize that to my workflow. And like I said, it seems like a really simple feature, but you'd be amazed at some of the major companies out there that avidly ignore this basic feature. Well, that one was pretty blatant, wasn't it? So there you have it. Whether I'm recording the audio for a bass lesson, or I bring a band in here and I'm doing an episode of Groovy Tunes with Jamie and friends, or if I'm tracking bass for a client or arranging and editing original music for my own purposes, I do it all with Studio One. And though I've done a lot of DAW jumping over the past decade and a half, I'm really confident that I've finally found a software that caters to my needs, to my workflow, and does everything that I need it to do. So I hope you found that insightful, and if you have any questions on how I use Studio One and my workflow and all that stuff, just leave me a question in the comments below and I'll get right back to you. There's a link popping up right now that'll take you to Presonus' website. They're probably much more qualified to answer your questions than I am. And there's also an awesome user forum that if you have more specific questions, you'll probably find the answers there. So that's it for today. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time here at thebassist.net. Hey, if you like what I do, please click on the subscribe button right here. And if you really like what I do, then click over here to see how affordable it is to join me at thebassist.net. But if you just want the free stuff, then click here to check out whatever YouTube's sophisticated robots think you should watch next. I'm sure they know what's best for you.